conservative new media viewers and JLin fans around the world. What's going on? We're here to talk about a new article or post that was put up 2 days ago on the JLin.net site. And it was great. The guys there at JLin.net got to talk with Jeremy's shooting coach. The man's name is Doc Scheppler. And I believe that he was the guy that went around with Jeremy last year on Jeremy's trip of Asia. And also, I believe he's been working with Jeremy for a considerable period of time. I can't remember when. I want to say like back to high school, this type of a thing. So this is certainly somebody that knows Jeremy's game well. And I'll put a link in the video description below the video below the video player, so that you guys can check out the interview for yourself. And I saw it by way of ClutchFans, and it's good that people are talking about it, because again, if you want to get really good information, then either you got to talk to Jeremy himself, or you have to talk with people that are around Jeremy or that work with Jeremy. I know people have asked me before, hey, maybe, sometime, Paul, you get to sit down with Jeremy. Maybe. But what's easier is to be able to talk with people like a shot coach. Now, I have no idea how JLin.net got access to Doc Scheppler, but it's good that they did. And in the age of the internet, with messaging and stuff, it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to be able to reach out to people and be able to get them to kind of share their expertise with you. So it's really great that JLin.net was able to do this. Look, so I've told you guys before, there's all kinds of great resources out there about Jeremy. Obviously, JLin.net. I've told you guys about Jeremy Lintel, the YouTube channel by our friend Andy. ClutchFans, there's, the work that we do. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there. You just have to look for it and know what you're looking for. And you have to figure out who's good and who isn't. And, you find that out as you listen to people and you read what they write, you read what they say. Are they talking to people that are close to the situation, like Doc Scheppler? And that's it. That's where you'll get an idea about who can really kind of help you out, understand where things are at for Jeremy, and maybe who is not as much of a help. When you get somebody as popular as Jeremy is, there's always going to be a rush of people that want to get in on the action, so to speak. And so there might be, 100 different sites talking about Jeremy, and maybe only 10 of them are worthwhile. So that's just something you have to, that you figure out on your own. And we can certainly tell you guys stuff, but just be going around, you'll find out what's good. And again, somebody like ClutchFans has been around almost 20 years. So, Clutch, regardless of what people think about Clutch or what they think about Clutch, is what they think Clutch feels about Jeremy. Clutch has access to the team. Clutch is going to talk to Jeremy. Clutch is going to talk to people in the organization. And that's useful. That's useful as a fan, even if you don't agree with some of what Clutch feels. So, okay, let's go over this. I'm just going to go over some of the high points in this interview and just kind of react to them a little bit. This was a really good insight into what somebody else who works with Jeremy or somebody who's studying Jeremy thinks about where Jeremy's game is and what he needs to work on. And this is a type of stuff that I try to talk about a lot. There's a lot of technical and just nuts and bolts type of stuff that goes on for the player as they improve and what they need to do to improve. And all of that's important. You don't, when you see a guy in a game, they're not doing drills. They're not doing techniques. They're not practicing. So you just get to see the finished product. But it's all the practicing, it's all the drills, it's all the mentality, like the mental work that goes into it. That's how a player becomes great. Combined with, of course, they're having a certain amount of talent to begin with. But really, it's the work that makes players great or not great. I mean, we've compared Jeremy before to people like Steve Nash. Steve Nash has, just an incredible, dribbling routine. That's amazing that he's been doing for a number of years now. And, that's how his dribbling ability got to the point that it's at. It wasn't just like he woke up with it one day. Ray Allen, the player for the Miami Heat, he's an amazing shooter because he's obsessive about working at it. And so the good thing is if you take somebody like Jeremy who has a lot of natural athletic ability, he's intelligent and he works hard, you can create a very, very good player. Jeremy can get to the level of a star or a superstar if he puts in the work, he stays relatively healthy, and he puts in the right work. He works on the things that he needs to work at. I mean, there's guys that they could spend a couple hours a day working on dunks, but that's not going to help them become a better player. So it's important that you work on the proper things. And some guys, some guys get into the NBA, they make a lot of money, and they don't want to work. Yeah, they want to have fun. When it's time for the off season, they just want to have a good time, and they don't work real hard. And those are guys that don't end up becoming great players. So, all right, let's turn to what Doc had to say here. And again, I'll just kind of react to it or comment about it as I go along. Now, Doc said that the team is young and growing, that meaning the Rockets, which is absolutely true. Again, this is a young team, and they do have a lot to learn. And that's why, again, when I kind of am critical of them, sometimes I pull back a little bit. You have to give them a break because they are such a young team. And not only are they young, they're not used to playing with one another. These guys coming in new from different situations, like James Harden, like Jeremy. The coach has to get used to them. They have to get used to each other. Then we have the trades this year. It's difficult. So it's certainly an accomplishment that they made the playoffs and that they won 45 games in the first place. Here's something that Doc said that certainly will strike a chord with a lot of people. And he said that James Harden is sometimes too slow on offense in terms of making decisions, and he stops the ball, in the way that Carmelo stops the ball. The ball gets to him, and then the passing stops. Look, I don't think there's any real way around that. I mean, that's part of what makes James Harden great. He does take his time on offense rather than hurrying on making moves. That can be an asset because some guys go too quick and they mess up because they're trying to go too fast. And that's certainly not a problem for James Harden. He does have to work at this. And he will. Again, James Harden's 23 years old. He is the best player on the team. He does have a higher skill level presently than Jeremy does. But he's still young. He's, sometimes he's a little too egocentric, like when he's doing the one-on-one matchups with PJ Tucker of the Suns. And there's a lot to learn there. And it's good that people pointed out to James Harden because he does need to learn these things. And again, I'm sure that he will. Doc then went on to say that Jeremy is tougher than he's given credit for. And I think we all agree with that. Jeremy gets knocked down a lot, hit in the face, bloody mouth, turns his ankle, and I think he's played every single game this year. He hasn't missed one game, and that is good to point that out. Right? Jeremy is a tough guy, and look, early in the year, his knee wasn't even close to 100%. That was obvious, and he still played through it. So that's a really good thing. I'm glad that Doc pointed that out because, one of the stupid things that came out of the New York situation at the end of last year and then going into this year when it became clear that the Knicks weren't going to bring him back was you heard all this stuff about, Jeremy wouldn't play in the playoffs because his knee wasn't right. He didn't want to play. He wasn't tough enough. Yeah, right. That's ridiculous. And, I think that type of thing just came out because, they lost Jeremy. And so now they have to try to start making excuses for why it happened. Now, something that Doc then said, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, he thinks that Jeremy does need to work on his defense guarding the basketball, meaning guarding the man with the basketball. This is what we've talked about a lot this year. Patrick Beverley and Jeremy, et cetera, et cetera. I agree with what Doc said. I think Jeremy does need to work on it. I'm not going to sit here and say Patrick Beverley is the greatest man-on-man defender that ever lived, because he's not. But I do think he is better at playing on-ball defense than Jeremy is. Some of it is because of the size difference. Patrick Beverley's smaller, and he's less tall, and he's less big, and so it's harder for a bigger guy to play the same type of defense that a smaller guy can play. But this is something that Jeremy can improve, and I think he will improve it. And Jeremy is a good defender all the way around. We know he's a good help defender. We know he's great at getting steals, and he's good at defending players that are around his size and bigger. But he can get better at defending the man with the ball, pressuring the man with the ball, and playing smaller players. And that's something that he's going to need to do to become a full star and superstar. So it's something that he has to work at, and I'm sure he'll work at it. And I'm glad that Doc pointed it out, because it's to make Jeremy the complete player that we want him to be. He does need to work at that. Doc said that Jeremy is getting better at playing off the ball, meaning that without the ball in his hands on offense. We've certainly talked about that a lot this year. He is getting better. We've seen him making cuts to the basket where they run that little curl play for him without the ball in his hands so that he can get the ball in his hands in a good place to shoot. All of these types of things. And those are new things for Jeremy because he is usually in his past the person playing with the ball in his hands. So it is something that needs to be worked at if you're not used to doing it. Now, Doc said something. He said that Jeremy needs to learn to attack closeouts on offense. What that means is, if you're playing an aggressive defense, or you're playing a defense that tends to kind of they do what's known as packing the paint. The perimeter defenders tend to kind of creep towards the lane to help out protect the lane on defense. And most NBA teams play like that now. What happens when you play like that is that when the offensive team you're playing against, when they get the ball and pass it out to the perimeter, then you have to recover quickly and then go and defend the outside shot. And in defending the outside shot, you have to do what's known as close out on the shooter. It's like if Jeremy's helping out on defense, and then all of a sudden the ball goes out to the man he's guarding, out of the 3-point line, and then Jeremy has to run out and try to contest that guy's shot. That's a closeout. Jeremy is closing out on the shooter. So when Doc says that Jeremy needs to get better at attacking closeouts, what that means is when he's on offense and they're playing that defense that leaves the guys open on perimeter, and then all of a sudden the guy has to run out when Jeremy gets the ball in his hands, take advantage of that. You can use that against the defense. All you need to do is make a simple little pump fake or something and drive right around the guy. And you'll leave the guy in the dust because he's running full speed at you. A good example of this, how this type of thing works, the way that you attack that type of a defense, is what the Dallas Mavericks did against the Miami Heat in the finals 2 years ago. Miami's defense, is so aggressive that you can use that aggressiveness against them. And Dallas would just move the ball around the perimeter. Here comes Miami running full speed to go close out against a shooter. Simple pump fake, let the guy go by you. You either shoot a jump shot from where you're standing, or you dribble in and take an easier jump shot, or you dribble all the way in and take a layup. And so what Doc is saying there is Jeremy needs to get better with that. And it's a good point. I think that's true. Jeremy can get better with that, and that's just another skill to learn on offense. Then Doc went on to say that Jeremy needs to stop turning down catch and shoot chances. That just means, look, if you get the ball and you're open, shoot it. And what Doc said is that Jeremy tends to be a little bit too hesitant to shoot jump shots, period. And I agree with that. I think we've seen that. When you're hesitant to shoot a shot, there's a much greater chance you're going to miss it. So even if you don't think you're going to make it, you need to shoot it like you think you're going to make it. You need to shoot it with confidence. And playing hesitantly is the opposite of that. And that affects shots. That affects your ability to make a shot. Now, you'll hear the expression, the guy was thinking too much when he shot it, or he waited too long. Right. Those things go against shooting well. And Doc mentioned how Jeremy hit 2 big 3-pointers in the last Memphis game because he didn't think about it. And we've talked about that. I'll mention that in games when I'm talking about quarter-by-quarter stuff. Jeremy caught the ball and he shot it right away. Even if he misses it, you could say, he's shooting with confidence. And that's it. That's what Doc is talking about. I absolutely agree with that. Jeremy needs to shoot like he's a great shooter. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. Shoot. Now, Doc was saying that he thinks that Jeremy's concerned that Jeremy doesn't want to be looked at as a ball hog, somebody that's just looking to shoot. And that's cool. I think, part of that goes back to like McHale and stuff. They want him to pass more and shoot less. But look, Jeremy's a scorer. He's, probably your second or third best scorer on this team. You need him to shoot. And so he needs to have it in his head. Take the shots that are there. Take the shots that are there. Don't hesitate. Just shoot them. Doc went on to say that Jeremy wants to be great. And we've talked about this. Not everybody wants to be great in the NBA, as silly as that may sound. And not everybody will work hard to be great. But Jeremy wants to be great, and he's working hard to become great. As I said, he's improved so much within this year. It's amazing. And the development of him in the last year and a half from, being on the bench in New York to where he's at now is meteoric. I mean, I don't think you could find a greater rise for a player who wasn't held in high regard. Now, you might get somebody who's a superstar in waiting that comes into the league and they develop really quickly. But for somebody like Jeremy, who was kind of cast aside, I don't think you'll ever see this type of improvement this quickly. And then you factor in that he was coming off the knee injury, and it's even more impressive. So it's great. Doc said that he had 2 instances this year, this regular season, where he went and kind of worked with Jeremy to kind of tune up his shooting mechanics. Times when Jeremy, I guess, felt like his shot was off and he kind of needed to get back to his basic form. And so, Doc went down there and helped him out, I guess, with that. Like, hey, snap your wrist, do this, do that. Little adjustments. As we said, if Jeremy is going to make big adjustments to his shot, that will happen in the off season. But there's still, during the year, there's going to be times, particularly for a young player like Jeremy, who's not a shooter, where he's going to need that help. Go over it a little bit, go over it again, so that you can kind of find the rhythm once again. And apparently Doc did that twice this year. Doc then went on to say that he wants Jeremy to be a 50% shooter from the field, a 40% shooter from three-point range, and an 85% shooter from the line. If Jeremy can do that, man, he's going to be great. There's a standard in the NBA for shooters, and like the most elite shooters, particularly among guards, perimeter players, are guys that can do 50, 40, 90. 50% free, field goal, 40% three-point shooting, 90% free throw shooting. Kevin Durant, I believe, this year is right on, finished with 50, 40, 90. That is the most elite category of shooting you can find. If Jeremy's able to get to 50, 40, and 85, he's going to be he's going to be putting up some pretty good scoring numbers. I can tell you that. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I really don't. The biggest weakness in Jeremy's game at this point in time is his ability to shoot outside jump shots. So if he's able to really dial that in, to really correct that, then everything else is going to get so much easier for him. And so I don't see why he couldn't do that. Nobody's born a great jump shooter. You have to work at it. Now, I've told you before, and during this year, at least one NBA scout said, well, there looks like there's a mechanical flaw in Jeremy's jump shot. Okay, maybe there is. And he might have to change things more dramatically, but it's possible for him to become a very good jump shooter. Maybe he'll never be great like Steve Nash or Ray Allen, but maybe he will. But even if he never gets quite to that level, he could still improve dramatically. Honestly, I think Jeremy can become a great outside shooter. It's just going to take work. And it's going to take time. Doc says that he wants Jeremy to be aggressive in the playoffs, just be himself, just play the way that he knows how to play. And he mentioned that, as we all know, Jeremy's a big-time player. Jeremy is Mr. Clutch, and Jeremy plays his best in big games. And so Doc is excited to see Jeremy in the playoffs, and that just is the way that we all are. Doc mentioned that, yes, he's going to be working more with Jeremy this summer, and he went over some specific things they're going to be working on. One of the things is they're going to do drills so that Jeremy can practice his shooting when he's fatigued. The reason why you do this is because you want guys to be able to make shots even when the game goes on and they start getting tired. I know Ray Allen does this a lot. a lot of guys do this type of drill, and it's a smart thing. So it's almost like teaching a runner to be able to keep their form in a race when they get tired. And so it is something you can practice, and it is something that can be improved. Doc also said that he wants to do more off-the-ball work, getting Jeremy more used to moving around and getting offensive position when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. Talked about that in particular, like using 2-on-2 drills and 3-on-3 drills and using a lot of pick and roll and stuff so that Jeremy can work on that. Great. He mentioned something that we've talked about, which is, again, Jeremy couldn't do a lot of this type of skill work last year because he was rehabilitating from the knee injury. I mean, that's something that gets lost a lot. Remember, we heard all the leaks and, Jeremy hasn't done enough work in the offseason. Well, you can't do everything. Jeremy's going on a tour of Asia, and everybody wants his time. And he's trying to do some skills work, and he's trying to rehab his knee. Well, you can't do it all. That's one of the things that's so great about the knee basically being finally back to full strength is now you don't have to waste time rehabbing. Now you can do skills work. And so I think you could see an even bigger jump up in Jeremy's level next year because he's actually going to be able to spend more time on basketball work rather than just basic rehabilitation on his knee. And he wants to get Jeremy more confident as a shooter in this offseason. And I agree with that. And again, that's a mental skill. There are some guys, and if you've played basketball anywhere, like on the streets, you know this. There are some guys who can't hit a shot for anything, but they think they'll hit every single shot they take. That's how Jeremy needs to get. In order for you to become a good shooter, you have to believe you're a good shooter. You have to believe you can be a good shooter. And so that's what Doc is talking about with that. Let's get this guy confidence in his shot and less hesitancy. Feel good, shoot the ball. Don't wait, shoot, and think you're going to make it. And that's it. Towards the end of this little interview, Doc was saying that he was talking about Jeremy and the shots that he takes around the basket. Now, we've talked about this a lot. This is the runners, the floaters, et cetera, et cetera. And something I've told you guys a lot about, or we've talked about some this year, is, Jeremy jumping off his right foot versus jumping off his left foot, doing layups and stuff like this. You have to be able to jump off of each foot, right? And it also is good if you can jump off both feet. You need to be able to do all three of those things to be an effective basketball player. You have to be able to do right-handed layups jumping off your left leg. You have to be able to do left-handed layups jumping off your right leg. You have to be able to do jump stops, which means kind of running into and then jumping off of both legs for effective moves around the basket, whatever it is, whether you're trying to dunk, whether you're trying to do layups, floaters, whatever. And so Doc was talking about this. And I'm just thrilled that he's talking about this stuff because, again, this is important technical details. And believe me, there are a lot of guys in the NBA that aren't good at these things. As I said, and what foot you're taking off of, what hand you're shooting with around the rim. These things are important for guards because you need to be able to give yourself as much distance and advantage over the bigger players as you can. And that's why it's critical to master all of those skills. And I'm glad that Doc's talking about this. He also mentioned Jeremy will continue to work on his ball handling. Basically laughed at people that said that Jeremy can't go to his left, dribbling, which is completely true. I mean, remember that at the beginning of this year, people were saying he couldn't go left. He goes to the left all the time. Doc also said that Jeremy is an excellent passer with his left hand, which he is. That's a good point. I've seen it. Even though he's right-handed, he's a very good passer with his left hand, which is a very good skill. And then finally, he talked about doing a 2-footed floater versus 1-footed floater. And again, that's just little technical stuff, but those things do matter. He said that, the 1-footed floaters are less consistent, and that's true. They are. So if you're able to stop and jump with both of your feet to do floaters and teardrops, you will likely have more consistency. And sometimes you do those type of shots also because you can shoot them quicker and be able to beat the big man who's coming to try to block your shot. So that's it. I mean, that's essentially an overview of the entire interview. I definitely go and recommend that you read it for yourself. It's good to get this kind of information that's so close to the source and that is covering essentially every single aspect of Jeremy's game. He talks about everything on offense and some on defense. And that's how Jeremy's going to get to the next few levels as a player, by doing these different things. And this is what we can look for as we watch for him to improve. Is he doing this better? Is he shooting more confident? Is he doing 2-footed floaters? All these little things. And as we keep seeing him do more and more, you're going to know he's getting closer and closer to not only, greatness, but sustainable greatness. Sustainable greatness. And that's what separates stars and superstars from regular players. Everybody in the NBA has some level of ability, or they wouldn't be there. But stars and superstars have more consistent ability. They can perform and score and do well night after night, whereas the other guys can't because they just aren't talented enough or they don't have the skill sets to do it. This is good. This is, like I said, I want to share this with you guys. Jeremy's got the tools. He's got the brain. He's got the work ethic. He's got, he's experienced now. He's not moving to a new city like he was last year and coming off of rehab. And, he's doing the first trip of Asia. Now he's starting to get a little bit more experience. And he can spend more time perfecting individual skills. Now, I'm sure he's going to have a very busy summer this summer with endorsement obligations, and we know that the Rockets are going to be doing preseason over in Asia, so it's not like he doesn't have other things to do, but no rehab, and no, he's not looking for a new apartment in Houston and all this stuff. So we're going to have to see how many games or how far Houston can go in the playoffs. And it's going to be tough against Oklahoma City. But even after that, then we start going into the next phase, which is, okay, now comes the improvements. Now comes the improvements heading into next year, his second year with Houston. That's why we told you guys, we're not going to stop covering Jeremy in the summer because he's not going to stop practicing. He's not going to stop playing. And so the more that we can find out what he's doing and watch his progress, the more, we can talk about it. And it never stops. I mean, it never stops, the development of a professional athlete. The only time when you have breaks in it is when, guys have a hard, long season and maybe they take 2 weeks off or 3 weeks off just to kind of get away from basketball or whatever sport totally. But then they go right back to work. They're going to start their lifting weights. They're going to start doing new skills, etc. And it's most exciting for a young player like Jeremy because that's when the most improvement happens. So it's even, now is the time we particularly will focus on him. When Jeremy's in his 12th season, going to his 13th season, well, that summer off season might not be that exciting in terms of what his development is. Hopefully by that time he'll have a full regimen of drills and practices, etc. Like Ray Allen, like Steve Nash. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, he's doing his, his dribbling drill every day and he's shooting 500 shots a day. And it's like, okay, maybe not so exciting then. Right now it's very exciting because he has to make the right decisions on what to do, and now is when we're going to see the biggest gains from implementing those skill development techniques. So that's it for now. Your comments below, thumbs up, thumbs down on this video. As I said, I'll put information about this interview that JLin.net did with Doc in the video description below the video player, so you can go and check it out for yourself. I am Paul F. Villarreal, the NBA expert. Thanks a lot for watching Conservative New Media. We strive to be the #1 JLin YouTube fan channel. Now, as I was saying in the comments of the Game 82 video, I'm going to go through the last Oklahoma City Thunder game today or tonight, just to kind of go through it and see what was what. Jeremy did great in that game, and I want to just look at it again to try to figure out what went well, what didn't go well, etc. And I might do a video about that maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But again, now it's, the regular season's over. We know who the opponent is in the playoffs, and it's time to start preparing for that opponent. Again, even if we lose this series 4-0, we want to do as well as we can, and we want to see Jeremy do as well as he can so that he can begin to learn and grow from playoff experience. As I said, he's not had a lot of those type of games, a lot of those type of situations. I do think that the Lakers game was that type of a situation. And just as I thought the Memphis game was that type of situation. And as I've said before, he will struggle in some of those games, particularly at first. Like the way he struggled against Miami in the regular season last year. And that, Miami went all out to stop him. But once you know how intense it is and what the opponent is going to do to try to shut you down, that's when you can begin to get even better. And you can begin to adapt and evolve so that you won't be able to be shut down the next time around. So there's really no better opponent in the West than the Oklahoma City Thunder for Jeremy to get that experience with. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to see how the team's going to respond, and I can't wait. As I said, Game 1 is coming up this Sunday, April 21st, I believe, in the USA, which will mean April 22nd, Monday in Asia, and I'm looking forward to it, man. Okay, we'll talk to you guys soon. Hope everybody's doing well, and that you're having a great night or great day wherever you are around the world when you watch this video. Take care. Talk to you again soon.